The perp looked confused for a moment, and then he began running for all he was worth, away from Janine. Hillary, too, was moving, hardly aware of doing so. She knew vaguely that there would be someone coming across the bridge ready to tackle the fleeing suspect. It simply wasn't procedure to have everybody together in one place. There was always backup, and so there was. Even now she could see 2 uniformed cops, not in armoured gear, true, but both men of a good size, running across the bridge to intercept the perp. She was just coming up behind them when the suspect did a crazy dodging manoeuvre that made her think of a ferret. Brian Herbert, still watching from the back of the boat, felt justified in losing him in the first place. "See," he could say, "I told you he was like an eel. The sod must be as double-jointed as a bloody snake." Tommy Lynch was the first to see the obvious danger, that Hillary was now directly in his way, and being on the boat, he could do nothing to help her. Hillary had very little time to feel dismayed. She watched wide-eyed as the white-skinned perp dodged a lunge and then ducked under the unloving embrace of the second cop like a manic limbo dancer. She heard both of her colleagues curse, even had time to see them bang into each other, fumble, and start to turn. But by then, the perp was almost upon her. He looked young, desperate, and mean, very mean. Worse, he could taste freedom. She could almost hear his thoughts. He'd been on the boat, trapped like a rat, but he'd got off it, hadn't he? He'd given that tart of a cop a good whack and dodged those other 2 like some ace footballer shrugging off a whole arsenal load of defenders. Now all he had in front of him was one middle-aged, suit-wearing, desk-jockey woman cop, and he'd have the whole city to get lost in. No doubt it stretched out behind Hillary like the promised land. Hillary knew there must be other colleagues behind her, some probably no more than a few yards away. There had to be, but that didn't help now. He came at her with the swiftness of youth, high on adrenaline. All the strength his situation conferred on him, his fear robbing any finer feeling he might normally have had. All he wanted was to steamroller over her and be away. Hillary briefly contemplated just stepping aside and letting him steam on past her. She doubted that anyone would blame her if she did. The 2 cops behind him were nearly on him anyway. And she could hear angry shouts behind her, telling her that backup was indeed on the way. Some might even argue she'd be right to do just that. The brass didn't like it when women officers got hurt, especially not detective inspectors. But she couldn't just stand there and let him pass, could she? Of course she couldn't. When he was just the right distance away from her, she lifted her foot in a classic high kick, stylish as a veteran of the Folie Bergère, and kicked him squarely in the balls.